This is DaveNoseworthyMMA.
This weekend's upcoming card is fixing to be a good one. With most of the attention on the main event where Jose Aldo will step in for an injured Frankie Edgar to face Max Holloway for the second time, there are other pretty intriguing fights going on as well. In this sport, there are never any guarantees. Just because a fight looks good on paper, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to meet expectations and deliver. But I have a pretty good feeling about this one. I've really got my eye on Oliveira versus Felder. It's impossible for me to see Alvarez versus Gaethje anything other than a knockdown, drag him out fight. And Cejudo versus Pettis is a classic striker versus wrestler. Two very highly skilled competitors at the top of their division. I fully expect that fight to deliver as well, though I do believe whoever happens to win isn't ready to face DJ next. And then there's Francis Ngannou versus Alistair Overeem, which is the fight that has really piqued my interest for a number of reasons. Firstly, even in the UFC, it's not every card where you're able to get two elite-level striker heavyweights squaring off against each other inside the cage. In any heavyweight fight, it can end at any moment. What's that old saying that's been going on for years? Big men, small gloves, someone's going to fall? That's often the case in these scenarios, and provided these two come to test each other on the feet, I expect that's what we're going to get. Francis Ngannou has made a whole lot of noise since entering the UFC almost 2 years ago. All 5 of his UFC performances have been impressive wins, with his last 3 bouts being first-round stoppages. With a professional record of 10-1, he has all stoppage victories, whether it comes by TKO or KO or submission. And the only loss he's had came from very early in his career during a decision. So he's a wrecking machine and a well-rounded one at that. The UFC's clearly taken notice over the past year. They've really been putting him out there on social media and as a guest fighter at a lot of events and such. And the typical treatment an up-and-comer gets when they have a good amount of hype surrounding them. Ngannou has certainly earned it. He's a scary guy for anybody at heavyweight. And every time he has stepped into the bright lights, he has performed. This seems to be one of those fights that the UFC sets up for a potential changing of the guard or the passing of the torch. If Ngannou is able to pull off the victory, it will catapult him into the upper echelon of the heavyweight division, and not only that, it could very well earn him a title shot as well. He's riding a ton of hype going to this fight, hype that was generated from amazing performances and impressing the fan base and the UFC brass. But in my opinion, as good as he is, as devastatingly hard as he hits, and as many times we've seen the Reem get caught and go down, and despite all the hype, I think it's a little too soon for Ngannou to get in there with Overeem at this stage. Of course, you have to expect the unexpected all the time in MMA, especially when it comes to the heavyweight division. But with a pro MMA record of 45-15 and a pro kickboxing record of 10-4, to say Overeem is the more experienced out of the two is a major understatement. Though being more experienced doesn't always translate into an automatic win. For instance, Cain Velasquez had just 8 professional fights when he stepped in against Brock Lesnar to win the heavyweight title. But I get the feeling that it's going to matter in this fight, experience that is. If the Overeem of late comes in there, which is an Overeem that is more patient, careful, and one who is efficient in the terms of his uses of energy, I think it'll be another case of a fighter riding a large wave of hype only to take a loss and, in turn, slowing down that hype train in a major way. Very often the UFC and the fans sort of get ahead of themselves when it comes to fighters coming off of a few impressive wins. While Ngannou has been very impressive, it hasn't been against the elite talents in MMA. With the exception of his last fight versus Arlovsky, and though Pitbull was certainly shop-worn, it was a really good test and one that Ngannou passed with flying colors. And with 74 professional fights under his belt, Overeem has taken his fair share of damage as well, and he's been stopped many times over his career, which most certainly puts him at risk against an extremely dangerous and hungry, hard-hitting guy like Ngannou. And I'm not saying that Francis isn't great or that he won't do great things in the future. He's a terrifying fight for anybody. But I believe that when it's all said and done, at some point, Reem is going to land a hard strike, hurt Francis, follow up, and then it's off to the main event we go.